Burning at the stake was never simply a form of execution. It was an orchestrated spectacle of terror and domination, designed to crush both body and soul with merciless precision. The scorching flames licked the air like tongues of hellfire, casting eerie shadows over the bound figure, trembling in helpless agony. The crackling fire illuminated eyes filled with raw, unfiltered fear, while the crowd, silent with dread or erupting in savage excitement, became unwitting participants in a grim ritual. This punishment was meant not merely to end a life, but to obliterate hope, silence defiance, and reinforce absolute control through terror. It was power stripped bare, wielded in its most ruthless form, a public theater of suffering, where the slow, unbearable death of one human being served as a chilling warning to countless others. The victim, helpless and shackled, was reduced to a symbol of disgrace and subjugation, stripped of dignity, identity, and humanity. Their suffering was deliberately prolonged, magnified and displayed in gruesome detail to etch the horror deep into the minds of all who watched. The flames did more than consume flesh. They seared a message into the collective consciousness that rebellion, heresy, or any act of defiance against the established order would be met with a fate far worse than death. Witnesses were forced to confront their own vulnerability and mortality beneath the oppressive gaze of tyrants and institutions that thrived on obedience enforced by fear. The agonized screams and flickering, fading life became a dark legacy of psychological warfare, an unrelenting reminder that cruelty could be both punishment and a weapon used to break the human spirit. Burning at the stake was not an execution. It was a horrific performance designed to haunt societies and instill a lasting, paralyzing fear for generations. The cruel ritual of preparation was as calculated and ruthless as the execution itself. Victims were stripped of all dignity, their hands tightly bound with coarse ropes or cold iron chains, sometimes gagged to silence their final desperate pleas or curses that might defy their captors. Paraded through throngs of jeering, hateful crowds, their plain, humiliating garments marked them as sinners and outcasts, amplifying their shame and isolation. Each agonizing step toward the stake was a passage through waves of scorn, hatred, and derision, a psychological torment layered atop the physical. The unyielding wooden stake awaited them, cold and merciless, surrounded by carefully arranged kindling and straw, prepared to ignite the slow-burning fire that would consume them utterly. Chains and iron collars fastened the victims firmly to the post, ensuring no hope of escape or last-minute reprieve. This methodical preparation was no accident. It was a deliberate act of domination, a terrifying display of power over life and death, designed to break not just the body, but the soul. The crowd, a complex mixture of fear, morbid fascination, and cruelty, bore silent witness to this tragic procession, their eyes burning with a cold curiosity or bitter satisfaction. In those moments, the victim's identity and humanity were reduced to ashes alongside their body. The entire process was a grim dance of control, an unspoken message carved in pain and fire. Absolute submission or utter destruction awaited all who dared challenge the established order. Fire held a profound symbolic meaning within medieval justice, entwined deeply with religious belief and divine authority. Flames were considered sacred purifiers capable of cleansing the soul of sin and moral corruption beyond earthly judgment. Scripture was invoked, portraying God as a consuming fire, and thus the act of burning the condemned alive became a ritual of spiritual eradication, a terrifying sentence aimed at the very essence of one's being. But beyond this symbolism lay a brutal practicality. Fire was an instrument of prolonged, excruciating death. Unlike a swift beheading or a merciful bullet fire, inflicted slow, lingering pain that transformed execution into a spectacle of horror and dread. This drawn-out torment was a merciless warning, carved in agony, intended to instill obedience through fear by making an example of the condemned. Furthermore, burning denied victims a proper burial, a fate considered catastrophic in a society where funeral rites were believed crucial to the soul's journey after death. To be burned was to be erased physically and spiritually, cut off from community and afterlife alike. The crackling flames symbolized both destruction and control, cleansing society of what it deemed impure while showcasing the terrifying power wielded by religious and political authorities. In this fire, punishment and symbolism fused into a ruthless instrument of terror, a dark testament to humanity's capacity for inflicting suffering in the name of justice and faith. The stake was not only a site of death, but a blazing crossroads where belief, cruelty, and domination collided in their darkest form. The agony endured by victims was unfathomably cruel, stretching moments into eternal torment. Death could come anywhere between 15 minutes and several grueling hours, depending on the kind of wood fire intensity and whether accelerants were used. The condemned found themselves trapped in a hellish limbo, caught between consciousness and oblivion, as flames engulfed them and choking smoke filled their lungs. In many cases, victims died not by fire itself, but from suffocation, gasping desperately for breath as their cries grew hoarse and faded into silence. This slow suffocation added a chilling pause to the ordeal, a cruel liminality between pain and release. Rarely executioners employed gunpowder strapped beneath arms or around the neck to hasten death with a violent explosion, a grim mercy denied to most. Many were condemned to endure every excruciating second, their prolonged suffering transformed into a macabre spectacle of terror designed to deter others. Every agonizing minute etched their pain into the memories of witnesses, reinforcing fear, submission, and obedience. This slow dance with death was a merciless testament to the calculated cruelty of those who engineered it, not simply to kill, but to break the human spirit through relentless suffering. The historical record preserves haunting tales of human courage amidst unimaginable cruelty. Joan of Arc, the young French heroine, endured a deliberately slow, torturous death in 1431, bound to the stake with wet wood piled around her to prolong her agony. Her cries pierced the cold air, a beacon of faith and defiance that refused to be extinguished. Jan Hus, the courageous reformer burned in 1415, faced his fate surrounded by green wood that produced choking smoke. He sang hymns even as life slipped away, inspiring generations and igniting revolts. The witch trials in Würzburg and Bamberg revealed darker cruelty where hundreds, mostly women, were tortured into false confessions and burned alive in fires designed to maximize their suffering. Richard Weich, a priest burned for heresy in 1440, stood firm in faith even as flames consumed him, slowly becoming a powerful symbol of resistance. These stories reveal that the stake was more than a place of death. It was a stage where cruelty, faith, and defiance clashed, leaving echoes of suffering and resilience across centuries. Public executions drew immense crowds, turning death into a grim spectacle that blended fear of fascination and twisted entertainment. Vendors sold food and trinkets nearby, transforming scenes of torment into carnivals of cruelty. Spectators' reactions were complex. Some recoiled in horror, their hearts heavy with sympathy, especially when innocence or piety shone through the flames. Tears were shed, prayers whispered, and sorrow quietly spread among those who saw the executions as tragic injustices. Others, hardened by repeated brutality, met these events with cold indifference or bitter scorn, viewing victims as deserving of fate. The chilling normalization of such cruelty reflected a society steeped in fear and rigid obedience, where torture and death were tools of control. Yet paradoxically, these spectacles sometimes fueled dissent instead of quashing it. Jan Hus's death sparked uprisings and witch trials, eventually provoked widespread criticism and reform. The burning stake became a double-edged sword intended to crush rebellion, but occasionally igniting it. It exposed the fragile boundary between fear and resistance, obedience and outrage, and stands as a haunting reminder that even in the darkest times, the human spirit can challenge cruelty and injustice. Ultimately, burning at the stake was a weapon of psychological warfare, an instrument designed to inflict terror, not just on the body, but deep within the mind. It shattered courage, extinguished hope, and reinforced a brutal system where cruelty masqueraded as justice. This dark legacy serves as a warning. The deepest horrors of history arise not only from violence, but from systematic dehumanization where punishment becomes domination and suffering is wielded to silence hearts and minds. Remembering these brutal truths is essential to reflect and resist and ensure that such cruelty never repeats itself in any form. The shadow of the burning stake still lingers, a fiery reminder of humanity's capacity for both horror and resilience.